So what does it really mean to, truly inherit something? We often think tangible things, right? Money,
Yep.
possessions.
Hmm.
But what about inheriting, like, a way of thinking, a
Yeah.
set of principles? That's kind of what we're digging into today. We're looking at some excerpts from a text called Legacy of the Dhamma, specifically a part called the Dhammadayata Sutta.
Which is in the Majjhima Nikaya, yeah. And it translates basically to a talk about inheriting the Dhamma, the teachings.
Right. Think of this as maybe a shortcut to understanding what it means to genuinely receive a teaching and why that matters, beyond just the surface.
And it's not just ancient history either.
No. I mean, think about how often we might value the perks of a job
Yeah.
more than the actual work itself, or maybe the status of a relationship
Yeah.
over, like, real connection.
Yeah, that's a good point. This old discourse, it really makes you think about that tendency we all kind of have.
So to really get it, you need the context. Can you set the scene for us? Where is this happening?
Sure, so picture the Buddha.
Yeah.
He's staying at Jetta's Grove in Savatthi. That's Anathapindika's monastery.
Okay.
And he's talking to his monastic disciples, his monks. And it's in this setting that he gives this really fundamental instruction about, well, what their inheritance should truly be.
Right. And that's the core of this deep dive, isn't it? Understanding the Buddha's clear direction. His followers, they should aim to inherit the Dhamma itself, the teachings, the principles,
Not the other stuff.
not the material benefits that might, come along with it, like offerings or honor, praise. What really struck me straight away was the compassion behind this instruction.
Absolutely. The text really highlights that. His compassion, his concern. He's worried, you see.
Worried about what exactly?
Well, his worry is that if his disciples only inherit the material stuff, the offerings and praise, it's going to lead to criticism, reproach.
Ah.
And that criticism, it wouldn't just hit the disciples, it would reflect back on him, the teacher, too.
Okay, let's unpack that reproach then. What's the specific fear here? What would people actually say?
Well, the text is pretty direct. The potential criticism is something like, the disciples of the teacher, they live inheriting material offerings, honor, and praise. They don't have any inheritance in the Dhamma.
Oof. Yes. So it suggests a really shallow engagement, doesn't it?
Totally. It implies they're just focused on the external rewards, the stuff you get, instead of the internal transformation the Dhamma is actually supposed to bring about.
So it's like missing the entire point.
Yeah.
Focusing on the applause, maybe, instead of understanding the play itself.
Precisely.
And the Buddha's point is, if they do truly inherit the Dhamma, that kind of criticism it won't stick. Not to them, not to him.
Exactly right. If the disciples genuinely live the Dhamma, embody it in their actions, it becomes obvious that their real inheritance is in those principles.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, neither they nor the Buddha would really be open to accusations of just being superficial. It completely shifts the focus, from what you can get to who you become.
This is where it gets really fascinating, I think. To illustrate this difference, the material versus the principle,
Yeah.
he uses this very relatable scenario, an analogy about a meal. Can you sort of paint that picture?
Yeah, definitely. So imagine the Buddha. He's just finished his meal, eaten his fill from his alms round, and there are leftovers.
Okay, some leftover food.
Right. And just then, two monks approach him. And the text specifically points out they are hungry and weak, physically weak.
Wow. Okay, a very human situation.
Yeah.
And the Buddha offers them this food.
Yes, he does. He presents the leftovers to these two monks. But there's a catch, almost a challenge. He tells them, if you decide not to eat this, I'm just going to discard it.
Discard it where?
Either on barren ground, where nothing grows, or into clean water. So it's a clear offer. Immediate physical relief is right there.
So they're faced with this choice: relieve their hunger right now or not. And how do they respond? This is where we see that principle really put to the test, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The first monk, his reasoning is quite something. He actually thinks back to the Buddha's instruction, that core teaching, heirs to the Dhamma, not material things.
And he sees the food as
a material thing, exactly, even though it's offered by the Buddha.
So what does he do? What's his decision?
He decides to endure it, to put up with the hunger and the weakness for the rest of the day and the night too.
Wow.
His logic is that accepting the food, even from the Buddha, would mean prioritizing a material offering over that fundamental principle. He sees it as a kind of test of his commitment.
That's some serious dedication. Choosing discomfort, physical discomfort, just to uphold the teaching. What about the second monk then? What's going through his mind?
Well, this is where the excerpt we're looking at, it just stops abruptly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We see the second monk starting to think about it. The Buddha's full, the food's there, it's going to be thrown away if nobody eats it. But the text cuts off right there. We
Yeah.
don't get his decision.
Huh. So no neat resolution for him. But we have that really clear example from the first monk. He makes this definitive choice, right? Based directly on the Buddha's teaching. Prioritizing the principle over his own physical need. It really underlines that point. The real inheritance, the valuable thing, is understanding and practicing the teachings, not the material perks. That monk's dedication is pretty striking.
It really is. His response just shows how seriously he takes the Buddha's guidance. It's not just about intellectually getting the concept.
Right.
It's about living it, embodying it, even when it's hard, physically hard.
And that unanswered question, the second monk, it almost feels deliberate, like we're left hanging.
It does feel a bit like that.
Maybe we're supposed to consider his reasoning ourselves. Perhaps the incompleteness itself is a kind of subtle commentary, that conflict between our immediate needs and maybe higher principles. It's often messy, unresolved, is something we all grapple with.
That's a really interesting way to look at it, yeah. The open ending definitely invites you, the listener, to think about the complexities, doesn't it? What different things might have swayed the second monk?
Right, like, would eating the food automatically mean he rejected the principle?
Or could there be other valid ways to interpret the situation? Maybe preventing waste is also important. It's not straightforward.
It really makes you think, though, this whole idea prioritizing the essence over the superficial gains. It resonates far beyond just monks and monasteries.
For sure.
How often in our own lives, maybe, do we find ourselves chasing the quick win, the immediate satisfaction, without really connecting to the core principles of whatever it is we're doing?
It's a constant tension, isn't it?
Yeah. What does it genuinely mean for you to be a true heir? To the knowledge you gain, the experiences you have, the traditions you encounter? That's definitely something worth mulling over.